Hello and welcome to We Turned Out Okay. This is the show where we are helping you live in this pandemic so that you can live through it. I have had to change our mission statement at the beginning of the show a little bit because we're now living in something that is going to require all of our positivity. And to that end, I'm extremely excited because I have with me a guest who's very, very positive and who's going to be very helpful with all of this. Her name is Mariela Ortiz. Mariela is a coach. She's working with people trying not to just stay afloat, but like thrive, even right now in the pandemic. I'm excited to talk about all of this and more with today's guest. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to Mariela Ortiz. Welcome, Mariela.
Well, thank you very much. I am so excited to be here, Karen. Thank you so much for this amazing opportunity to be on your podcast.
Oh, you're very welcome. I was so thrilled when a mutual friend of ours connected us, and that happened to be, so there was a wonderful day about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, where two people, two colleagues of mine, basically on the same day, I got two letters that said, connecting you to wonderful people. And I was like, oh, so this was one of those, which is really, really neat. How are you and your family keeping right now? Like, so you're in Costa Rica.
Yes, I live in Costa Rica. I've been living here. I'm originally from Costa Rica, but I grew up in the States. So I moved to Miami when I was 5 after having moved from Costa Rica to Guatemala for 2 years. And then I grew up in Miami and I lived in the States because then I moved to Boston for college and lived there for a couple of years working. And then I moved back to Costa Rica when I was 25. So I've been here for a while now, and now I have a family and everything over here.
Oh, so I live just outside of Boston in Massachusetts.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I love it. Yeah.
I actually moved down from Canada when I was 3. So I also have kind of an immigration, experience, or moving around, I suppose, experience. Where'd you go to college?
I went to Babson.
Oh.
I was a business. Yeah, marketing finance was my major, and I had a minor in psychology.
Wow. When we're done, I'm going to have to ask you, I know people who went to Babson, so I'm going to have to be like, did you know this person? Did you know?
Okay.
So that's really interesting. So how did you go from sort of business marketing, psychology to coaching, which is what you do now?
So it's interesting, the transition. Psychology was always my passion, like helping people ever since a young age. I knew that I wanted to do something in that field. And the way life started taking me, I ended up studying business, and marketing, I guess, has a little bit to do with the way people behave. So probably that's why I liked it so much. The finance part really wasn't my thing. I kind of went into it because I guess it helps, but it really wasn't my thing. After graduating, I always have had this entrepreneurship like part of me. I really like starting new things, inventing stuff. And after I graduated, I worked in the life insurance industry, which was completely different to what I really liked. Mm-hmm. And once I moved to Costa Rica with a business opportunity, which now I understand, I think was life's way of bringing me here, because that business opportunity just didn't go very well. But then once I moved here, I really started looking for what was my passion. And having had some experience in yoga, so I started through yoga. So yoga helped me connect myself to what I really liked, right? Connected me to who I really was. So that was kind of like the door that opened all of this up. From there, I became a mom. I met my husband here in Costa Rica. We got married. I had my first child, my son. And when he was born, I wanted to introduce him to this world that I had loved so much through yoga, and I found that there was nothing for little kids here. So that's kind of where I started going in to learn how to teach children's yoga, and I became a certified adult instructor, and then went into the whole certification for kids. And that's kind of how this part of my life was born. I opened up the first, and at that time only, kids yoga studio here in Costa Rica. And through my experience with the kids and the parents, I looked, because it was something more that was missing, not only the physical part. So I was introduced to mindfulness, and that opened up a whole new world for me. And I will get to that, I'm sure, a little bit later, because it helped me understand how to be a more calm person, less anxious, dealing better with life. And from there, I'm a forever learner, I guess, an forever student.
Yeah, lifelong learner.
Yeah, exactly. And then I went into positive psychology, which was kind of like the icing on the cake that I needed to complete like my package, right? And positive psychology just continued to open up doors and possibilities. And now what I do is I combine all of those things, yoga, mindfulness, meditation, and positive psychology. And this is how then I do what I do now, which is help people, from kids to adults, try to live a happier life, I guess. I know that's very broad, but looking to see what we're doing on an everyday basis and how we can improve certain things so we can feel better about ourselves and about the life we're living.
Oh my gosh. So I feel like we're twins. So I also have 2 boys, which is, just right there, right? I right after the first one was born, I went back to an aerobics class I had been taking before he was born, and they'd replaced the teacher with someone who was a wonderful woman, but was not an instructor, had no idea how to lead a class. And I remember thinking, you know what, I could do this. And I thought, well, why don't I just so I became an aerobics instructor. And during my training for that, I took a 9-month training course before I took the exam. And in that, it was at this gym where they had childcare, so I could bring my new baby. And well, he was probably about a year old by then, but he still felt pretty new to me. And they had yoga classes there, and I had always been very daunted by yoga. It always felt like something I wasn't gonna be able to do or deal with, or whatever. There was some connotation of it that I was like, oh, I don't know, it doesn't feel like it's for me. And they had a yoga on stability ball class, like a class that combined those great big balls with yoga. And I was like, well, I'll try that. And I fell in love, and I never looked back. So after I got my fitness certification, aerobics and fitness certification, then I went and became certified as a yoga instructor. And I actually, I didn't, so I think was something that's been interesting, like all of my life. I love working with children. I loved working with children in a school, like a preschool kind of capacity. And but I think as much, I would say, I loved working with their parents, like, to sort of bring parent volunteers in, to have conferences with parents, to sort of have all these connections with parents was half the fun for me. And then when I became a parent, I stopped being a preschool teacher, and then I became a fitness instructor, and then I got a tendon disorder, which longtime listeners will know about that. But what's happened after the tendon disorder is I've now been able to, so first of all, positive psychology, mindfulness, these are the things that got me through and I learned them in yoga, that got me through those first, years of my journey as a person with a tendon disorder. And then those are the things that have lasted longest, the positive psychology, being, you have choices about, we all have choices about like how we can spend our time. And I don't want people to be sort of, gesturing at their phones or whatever as they're driving shit, throwing them or whatever. Because it's really hard to say to someone who, I'm working with a client right now who is a single mom. She is in lockdown with her 4-year-old boy, and she works a 60-hour week. Like, how do you do that? Like, and yet she has found time to do things. It's really, I mean, my hat is just absolutely off to her. And I don't think you can do that without whether it's positive psychology or whether it's mindfulness or a combination. I think those are the ways that, I guess we have found similar ways to kind of come along our journeys. And I love that. I love that so much. So how are things in Costa Rica right now? What's happening there in terms of the pandemic? We're recording this in July of 2020.
So let's see. In Costa Rica, the pandemic started slow. We were all very good in the beginning. We had very few cases in the beginning. There has been, it's a small country, right? So first, let's, starting off by saying we are a small country, and the government reacted very fast. So basically, like with the first 30 cases, practically, the schools were shut down. All kids were sent home. We were advised to work from home. So whoever could stay home did stay home. And in the beginning, I think the first 3 months, it was much better. Of course, after 3 months, people start to get a little bit more anxious being home. The economic situation also becomes a lot harder, so people have to start going out to work. And as of right now, I think our first case was in March, I believe, like early March. And as of right now, July, we are having the most amount of cases per day that we have had since the beginning. Mm-hmm. So right now, as we speak this week, the capital, San Jose, we are in lockdown. 1 week of nobody leaving their house. We can only drive once a week to go to, 1 day during the week to go to supermarket, pharmacy, or hospital, and that's it. And it's tough, but I think people here are for the majority, we're trying to do our best. We're really trying to take care of ourselves and everybody around us. But people are starting to lose it a little bit more. They're starting to get anxious. They're starting to have more difficulty financially. And I think what is killing most people is this uncertainty for how long more is it going to be like this. Mm. So, it's kind of tough to say because there's also a lot of back and forth between, yes, safety with our health, but also, people, there's a lot of poverty here. So, people need to go out to work to eat. Yeah. Yeah. So, it's that balance that as government officials, it's really hard to make the right call. And I don't think it's a win-win anywhere, right? So absolutely. It's tough. So I think we're all trying to do the best we can, just like everywhere else in the world. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a similar experience to what we've had in the States, where, we sort of had this, yay, we did it kind of feeling. And then it's clear that we haven't quite done it yet. Like things are getting, cases numbers are going up, and tempers are getting frazzled, and there's a phenomenon that I learned of first in probably April called quarantine fatigue. And it's where people start to think, well, we're doing fine. Like, I don't think I should really need to keep social distancing, or I should be able to go out and do the things that I used to love to do.
because everybody's fine. Like, no, the kids. And then what we start to see is like, if you don't do that, there is still a problem. So, I mean, there's the wider world. There's something I've been thinking on recently a lot is Stephen R. Covey wrote a book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And in that book, he talks about two circles, a bigger circle that that each of us has called the circle of concern. That is everything that is that we are tuned into, right? Everything from sports teams to news to talking with friends and family to procuring food to eating food to talking with our families, whatever. And then there's our circle of influence, which the circle of concern is a lot is bigger anyway. We are there's more in our concern than we will have influence over. And what we're sort of trying to do, according to Covey, is to really spend our time in that circle of influence as much as we can. So in other words, like, we've got this reality that we're living in where, the coronavirus, for example, is a huge problem. And there are going to be officials, and there's going to be science that is going to dictate how we have to do things, and we don't have control over that, right? But what do we have control over? So in your coaching practice, how are you helping people? Well, I guess I even want to get a little bit more closer into that. Like, how are you helping in your family? Like, what is your family doing sort of within your circle of influence? Like, how are you reacting to all of the fears and the things that are happening? I suspect it's going to be a positive, something positive.
So, that question is interesting because I feel that it has changed. So in the beginning, it was much more of a roller coaster kind of. There was, and I'll speak to myself and my feelings first, and then we can talk about like my family. Because, I'm sorry, I don't know what's happening with the lights here.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
I keep getting this cool flash.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can still continue to talk.
Exactly. So I realized that family-wise, with my kids especially, if the way I'm feeling has a lot to do with the way they feel also. So that's why I'll start with me first. So in the beginning, for me, there was a lot of sadness. There was a lot of, what is this? I can't believe this is going on. Kind of like strange times, and kind of accepting, like a period of accepting of what is really happening. So it was a lot of like roller coaster between sadness and fear and no, everything's going to be okay, and all these mixed emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And as the time started adding up, and days turned into weeks and weeks into months, so I have realized that it does take an intention. Okay, it is a daily practice of choice, of not letting yourself fall into the negativity of everything that you hear on the news and the conversations people are having. And it's inevitable that when you speak to anybody, the first topic that is going to come up is COVID. It's inevitable. But then you can decide how you want that conversation to go. If you just want to talk about all the tragedy that is happening, or you can acknowledge the hardship, but then decide to focus on maybe the opportunity or what is going well.
Yeah.
So having said that, that's the way we've been trying to operate in this family, the way we've been trying to deal with our days. It's not true if I tell you that every day there's positivism. That would be a lie. There are days when my husband has had a hard time, and maybe he's looking at things like, not with a very favorable outcome, or when I feel like I'm in a hole and there's no way of getting out, or you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, or the kids, you know, I have a 15-year-old and a 12-and-a-half-year-old, and they're also like, you know, what's going to happen with school, and when are we going to go back, and when am I going to see my friends? So there's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that we have really come together as a family to support each other. And luckily, when one of us is having a bad time, the other ones are pretty positive. So, you know, we help each other, balance each other out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how we've been dealing. When one is having a hard time, you know, we communicate, we talk about it, and the support of the other ones are there to help lift the one who's having a hard time.
And I feel like in that way, you're really living your values, right? Because you could totally, and some days we do this where you just can't help but fall down a negative rabbit hole. And, but if you're like, we've had a joke during the pandemic that it's a great day if mom, or it's a good day anyway, if mom only cries once, like, and I would say in recent weeks, that's been less true because I haven't cried every day. And today something incredibly positive happened that moved me to tears for a good reason, right? Like, so I don't remember the last time that happened, but wow. I mean, I love what you're talking about. On your website, I won't remember the exact wording, but it's so reassuring. Like the very first thing that someone would see when they go to marielaortiz.com is, we have to live in this. we have to find ways to be happy and to thrive, because that's the only way we're going to get through this. I think I would love to talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of listeners, a lot of viewers like me you can sort of mentally say to yourself, I feel terrible because so much is happening in the world that's bad, and there are awful things, and I do feel so much compassion for people who are in different circumstances or who have had loss because of this. How can I then go and be happy, right? Like, how can I overcome these sad and awful feelings? You know, and like, I just love the idea that you can speak to the necessity of overcoming those feelings of guilt and going on to be positive, right? And to be happy.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit?
Of course, and I would love to, because I love this question, because it's something that I have battled with for a long time. So let me just start off by saying that I by nature, I'm not a positive person. Wow. So as a young child, even as a very young child, I suffered from anxiety. I had all kinds of stomach issues growing up because I would stress and worry so much. And I would always look at what could go wrong. So, you know, and my parents would tell me, but why do you always go to the bad? You know, look at what could go right. But I would be stuck on all the stuff that could go wrong. So for many years, I thought that I was a pessimist, that was just my nature. I've realized now that it's just a behavior. So it's not who I am. It's just the way I was wired, or, you know, my brain was wired to think. But I realized also at some point in my life that that's not what I wanted, because that was not helping me be happy. It was just making me more miserable. And what really made me want to make the change was one day when I realized that all I had done that day was scream at my kids, complain about everything that was going wrong. And it was one of those, I say, divine interventions, because nothing really happened. It was just, I realized, I looked around and I said, you know, I have everything to be happy. Why am I not being happy? And then I realized that a lot of it was the way that I was the mental chatter that I had in my head, the story I was telling myself, what I was focusing on. So that's where all this transformation, like I started researching and trying to figure out and learning. And that's how I got also on more into this path. It kind of happened at the same time that I started going into yoga for kids and all of that. So it kind of happened at the same time. But going back to your question, the reason why I love this question is because I feel that we all have a choice, right? And when we see some suffering in the world, right? We see what is going on. There is that empathetic and compassionate part of us as human beings comes in, but then we feel that in order to help or to really show compassion or solidarity, we need to feel the same thing that the people who are suffering are feeling, right? Because then that's the way we show that we understand. However, that would be like, and I'll give you an example. So let's say that I have a friend who fell into a hole, right, in the ground. And she's looking at me from in the hole saying, hey, can you help me get out? Because it's really scary in here. It's dark and there's no water, there's no food. And I'm looking down at her and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I'm so sorry. Here, let me go in there with you. But then I didn't help her. I went in there with her. Now it's two of us instead of just one.
Yes.
Right?
Wow,
So
that's a great example.
The same thing as joining in the suffering. Whereas going back to the example, if I say, oh my God, it must be terrible down there. I'm so sorry you're there. Let me see if I can help you. So if I am outside of the hole, I can, maybe go get a rope or get some more people or send her some water, send her some food while we figure out how to get her out.
Yeah.
That's different. So going back to the way I feel, right, or the way we all feel when there's so much suffering, if I join into that suffering, it doesn't help. If I try to maintain myself positive, if I try to bring some joy into my life and other people's life, we start spreading those positive emotions, and that is more helpful than having more negative emotion. Because what we also know from positivity and the way the brain works, when we are positive, when we are more optimistic, when we have feelings that are more joyful and positive, we are more creative. Mm-hmm. Our vision expands, right? So we see a broader picture. So there's more solutions that we can find to a problem. Whereas if we focus on the negative, our view becomes a lot smaller, more focused. So then it's a lot more difficult to find solutions, to be creative, to be more helpful. So if we really want to help, we need to start by being more positive ourselves.
I just wrote that down. I wrote down, when we have feelings that are positive, we are more creative, which is basically what you just said. And you can't, human ingenuity is what's going to get us through, right?
Exactly.
And then the other thing that comes up for me with all of this is what we're modeling for our kids, right? We're either giving our kids the idea that like, you should just despair, nothing is ever going to get better. We're all in this together at the bottom of this hole. Or we're on an adventure. Yes, there are scary things that we encounter on an adventure, but we can stay positive, thus be creative and get through it.
Exactly, because this time, I know we all wish we weren't going through this, right? It's difficult. Definitely, it is difficult. I think it's one of the hardest things that we have encountered as a community, as a society, as humanity. We have to remember also that it's not the first time, though. This
Yeah.
happened before, and as a humanity, as a human race, we got through it.
Yeah.
And it's been 100 years since the last time this happened, and we were able to get through it. So that can just show us that we are going to be able to get out of this also, if we already did once.
You know what I think is so interesting about that too? Tell me if this resonates. There was the 1918 flu pandemic is what you're referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of terms that we use now were coined then, like social distancing was one that comes up a lot. Quarantine fatigue actually came up in there as well.
Uh-huh.
And yet I had never heard these terms. Like at one point in our society, this consumed people, and people got sick and people died and hospitals were overwhelmed. And we learned from that how to make it not happen again, right? And we've now gone on to a time where like eventually people were able to go about their lives again. And so much so that no one in living memory has those experiences. Like, we can read about this, but we can't talk to people who were alive then, because there's not that many people who were alive in 1918. And if they were small children, so they wouldn't maybe have the kind of memories, right? And that gives me a lot of hope, because it shows me that there will come a time when somebody has to relearn what social distancing is, or maybe they don't. I don't know. Hopefully not. But there will come a time where these things, this crisis that we're in now is abated, and we can continue to live. We got to get to that point, though. So
yeah, definitely, and again, it's just, you can also look at it in this way, where we all go through hardships in life. Everybody has their set of hardships, and each individual can also decide from the hardship how they're going to come out of that hardship afterwards. And when I say this, it doesn't mean that we won't have days when we sit and cry all day, and that's okay. You have to give yourself permission to feel, and part of being human is feeling all these emotions. So fear and anger and sadness, all of them are part of what makes us human, and it's important to allow ourselves to feel the feelings. So when I have those difficult days, it's I call it's my pity party. I have a pity party where I just cry all day, and everything is sad and blue, and I'm like angry with the world. But the difference is that I don't allow myself to stay there. So I have the day and I say, okay, today is one of those days. I feel terrible. And, I warn my kids, right? I'm not feeling very good. So maybe I might not be as nice as always, or maybe I might be a little bit snappier, or I get very critical and I realize that, and maybe I might make a comment that's kind of harsh and critical, and I say, of course, because this is how I'm feeling, right? So I will even point it out, but I don't allow myself to stay there, because I know that way of feeling for more than 1 or 2 days will just bring me down and destroy me. It will stick me in that hole. And then I won't even want to be with me, because it's one of those days where you can't even stand yourself. And it's not pleasant, right? So I make sure not to stay there. And I've also learned that if I see that I'm staying there for an extended period of time, I find help. I ask somebody, hey, can you help me? Because I'm feeling stuck here and I don't know how to get out. Right. So I ask for help.
And I think that's such an important point, because so many people, I've noticed in my experience as a parent coach, what I've noticed is people feel isolated. They feel alone. They feel angry and frustrated. And then they feel ashamed because they had these awful feelings. So they don't ask for that help. They don't get that help. And it kind of starts a cycle that then gets perpetuated. One of the ways we've been learning to talk about it in my online private coaching practice is that we get to try again tomorrow. No matter how awful today was,
Yeah.
we get to try again tomorrow. And I also thought there's a book that I loved. I know it's been turned into a movie, but I've never seen the movie, so I can't say. But there's a great book for children called Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. And I just feel like it's such a good, it's so true that like some days are like that. And trying again tomorrow is really, one way to kind of counter that, to know that like, our emotions we won't stay in this emotion forever. We will come through it and we'll get to a better place and we can try again tomorrow. So.
Yeah, definitely. And that is so important. And for me, what you're talking about required a mindset shift. Mm-hmm. So it was allowing myself to say, hey, it's okay to not know what I'm going to do. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to scream at my kids and then say, oops, I feel so guilty that I did that, and then go and apologize, and so it's giving myself permission to be human, because it's part of who I am as a human being. And what I said was, so before I used to stay in that guilt, and I used to like really beat myself up. Mm-hmm. How could you do this? And, you're such a terrible mom, and etc. Now I said, yeah, the way I look at it now is like, yeah, I could have done better. Definitely. What is going on that didn't allow me to do better if I know better? Yeah. So I look within, because there's obviously something bothering me inside that allowed me to make that or have that reaction that I know is not the right reaction. So then I will take the time to go, okay, to ask myself, what is going on? What am I feeling? Mm-hmm. What is the feeling? Where is this really coming from? And then that helps me learn and grow. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that my mindset shift was in seeing these hardships, these difficult encounters, these unpleasant situations as opportunities to grow and improve. Now, it doesn't mean that I have to like it, and I probably won't like the situation, but instead of just looking at it like with the victim mentality of why is this happening to me, I've tried to look at it and say, okay, how can I grow from this? What can I learn? And what can I heal from this situation? Mm-hmm. Also? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's not easy. It's not always that's something that comes up so natural. It's something that I work on every single day.
Yeah, I do too. Mm-hmm. I think I really like when I can connect with someone who has such expertise in coaching and in helping, and can also say, yep, this is me too. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I do these exact same things, and I need to, encounter them and work through them. And I mean, I think, the pandemic has been and continues to be devastating. I would also say that for me, I've been able to connect with so many more parents of young children who I can help, and in turn, helping them has helped me come through it. And that's helped me be there for them. It's helped me be more positive and be there for my family and myself. It's given me a reason to get up in the morning. And I took probably, 2 months, maybe 8 or 9 weeks, where I just couldn't, I was in that brain fog for most of March, April, May. Mm-hmm. And what really got me out of bed was the idea of, here are people who need me and I can help them. Right. So for me, that was a way of overcoming I really want to kind of bring our conversation around to the word resistance, because I think you would have some really great insights on resistance. Here's how I think of resistance. So there's a series of books that my kids and I absolutely loved when they were younger called Skullduggery Pleasant. They're like sci-fi fantasy kind of thing. And Skullduggery Pleasant is a detective. He happens to be deceased. He's a skeleton, and the like I just have to share about this goofy fact. So on the very first book, this is the reason why my kids picked up this book. You can see they were older at the time. So they were probably, I don't know, 10, 12, something like that, 12, 13. The cover of this book is this like, is the skeleton, Skullduggery Pleasant. He's wearing like a detective sort of coat and hat, right? But he's clearly skull and bones. And he's hurling these like fireballs. And the caption says, and he's the good guy. And my kids were like, oh yes, sign me up. And there in this world, there is a book of names. It's got everybody's true name is listed in this book. And it's in a room. And it's extremely well protected because if a supernatural person can get a hold of somebody's true name, they can control that person. So no one wants that to happen. This book is very well protected. And Skullduggery and his young friend, who's like our protagonist, I don't remember her name, Stephanie maybe. We'll call her that since I can't remember. So Skullduggery and Stephanie are standing at the door to this room, and he's just told her, oh, this is very well protected, this book. And she's like, it's just an empty room. And he's like, oh, try to go to the book. See if you can go grab that book. Go try to pick it up. And so she's like, okay. And she starts walking towards the book. And as she's doing so, all these thoughts are coming into her head of like all the things that might go wrong if she touched that book, or like what would really happen. Maybe it wouldn't be such a good idea. And finally she turns around and she goes back to the door, and he's like, you don't have it. She's like, no, I decided not to. And he's like, you see, it's very, very well protected. And I sort of feel like resistance is like that because it's this insidious, like it gets in your head and you get up in the morning and you're like, I'm going to do this thing. And then I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to exercise now because nobody's going to the gym right now. And then, I'll do it after lunch. And then you eat lunch, and then it's the 2:00 kind of like lull. And then you're like, well, maybe I'll just do it tomorrow. Like that's resistance. And it can come to us when we're trying to do a creative project. It can come to us when we're trying to not have that drink at night. It can come to us when we are in moments of stress or worry or uncertainty where we know what we want to do and we just can't quite get there. And I would love it, Mariela, if you could take us through how to resist resistance.
Mm-hmm. Interesting question. Yes. Okay, so it's,
or at least how to start. I don't mean to put you on the spot, and
No, and I say it's interesting because it's something that, on a personal level, I've battled a lot. So I have a very I'm very familiar with that feeling, right? Yeah. And I think like we all are in different ways, right? Yeah. What has worked for me and what I help my clients and my friends and my students when it comes to resistance is, first of all, getting in touch with the true feelings, because the resistance is to whatever it is, it's on a superficial level, right? So whatever we are resisting will show up on a superficial level, but whatever it is we are resisting on that superficial level is just like to give us an idea of what there really is underneath. Because it comes down to that it's showing up with, I don't know, the gym, or it's showing up with the food, but there is a deep down rooted cause of a belief that we have that is at the core of that resistance. Mm-hmm. So it's trying to get to that core belief that is the work that we have to do, and that it's not always as easy to understand, because the resistance can sometimes show up like it has nothing to do with that core belief. Yeah. But when we start digging in and asking ourselves a series of questions and really starting to understand, like starting to peel off the layers, we start to get to it and really, like I love to say, or I believe, like this is deep down in my belief, that everything comes down to two feelings. We either act from fear or we act from love.
Oh,
And all the feelings like that we have of anger, of disappointment, of sadness, of like all these like difficult feelings will come down rooted to a core belief that has something to do with fear. And all the other positive feelings and all what motivates us at the end comes from love. So we're always either acting from one or the other, just that we won't name it always fear or love, because sometimes when something happens, right? When, for example, using that same example of exercise, right? So if I want to exercise in the morning and no, I'm so busy, I got to do this or I got to do that, I got to, I'll exercise later. And we keep putting it off. And like, there's something that is not allowing us to really, like, we know we want to do it up here, right? Because we know it's good for us and, physically, mentally, etc. But we never get around to it.
Yeah.
That what we really need to understand is, okay, what am I prioritizing and why is this at the end? Why do I keep putting the exercise at the end? What am I, what is this telling me about myself? Like, start to ask yourself these questions to understand where this is really coming from. And then, you start to work on understanding. That process of working on understanding is maybe like what I mainly help my clients with, because that is the hardest part. Because a lot of the times I get, well, I don't know. It's like we feel like there's a brick wall that doesn't let us go through to really understand. And I feel that many times that is, again, coming from fear. And it's this like mental fatigue of trying to find out, because when we really find out what it is, then we're responsible for making that change. Then, all the arrows point to us of, okay, now so now you got to do something about it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is hard to deal with also sometimes too.
I mean, I feel like in terms of exercising, someone could have so many fears about that are just so deep-seated and hard to find, and sorry, you.
Yeah, and what I was going to say is that a lot of the people that I work with, I've encountered that something like exercise and not exercising, or eating properly, having, a well-balanced diet, has a lot to do with self-worth. It comes down to self-worth, not feeling good enough, not loving yourself for who you are, or starting that process of accepting who you are. So this is where, it comes down to really understanding what it is that, that belief system that we have, that it's like we have a program that's running in our head. And we are running, and that is the initial program that was planted, for example, unworthiness. So there's so many things that we're doing on a day-to-day, and so many decisions and choices that we're making with that program of unworthiness, but we're doing it without even knowing. It's on a subconscious level, and we're not even aware of it.
Yeah. It's making me think, so this is something I've never shared on the show. So I've shared one thing, but I've never shared an aspect of this. When I was a child, I was sexually abused, and it's a it's a long story that I do tell from a perspective of how someone could help if their child has had something like that happen to them, in my book, which is called Positive Discipline Ninja Tactics. But what I want to talk about here is when I was in college, I read a book called The Courage to Heal. And one of the things that this book talked about was, and this, I had therapy about this. I mean, like it was more than just reading this book and everything was great, but this has always stuck with me. So this book talks about how people who have had this experience can be very sort of self-sacrificing. And one of the ways that can show up, and this seems like such a strange thing to reference, but it's felt so true. It's been so true for me. Is someone who's had this experience or any traumatic experience might not go to the bathroom, like might not go pee as frequently as they need to. And so this book basically says, if you are finding yourself like withholding that, like not, you've got all these things to do, so you're not going number one because you've got to take care of this and you've got to cook that and you've got to make this bed and you've got to do all these things. That is a form of self-sabotage, self-sacrifice. And like, you want to stop that. And like, I mean, I've noticed it again, sort of in the pandemic, that I will be like, bouncing around because I have to get to the bathroom so bad and not doing it. And then I've really had to say to myself, you know what, like, is that what this is? Like, does this get back into this really deep-seated kind of like response to trauma? And I kind of think maybe it does. So I've been trying to be much gentler on myself and just say, you know what, put down I can't even think. Like, you can write this email after you have visited the bathroom. It is okay for you to do that.
Right.
I mean, it can come to us in such small, everyday circumstances,
Mm-hmm. And it usually does. I mean, it usually does. I feel that, like, for me, I feel that life will give you different opportunities to begin to heal. And when you overlook them, then maybe, the opportunity will come a little bit bigger. You can name it opportunity, or you can name it difficulty or crisis, whatever.
Yep.
But it gets like, it's kind of like, when your child is like, mom, and you're doing something else, mom, they start to get louder and louder until it's like, mom, 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 mom,
Yep.
pay
And you're
attention
like,
to me.
Yeah.
Right. It's the same thing with the things that happen to us in everyday life. That's why mindfulness is such an important part of my work, because mindfulness allows us to become aware, to bring attention to what it is that is going on in my body. What am I feeling emotionally, our thoughts, everything. For me, it's the starting point, and it's necessary for anything that we want to do, to live a happier life, to be healthier, to enjoy more time with our kids, because it allows us to understand, okay, what is my starting point? Where am I right now? Okay, and where do I want to go? So you need to know where you are and where you want to go to figure out how you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And that's what mindfulness brings to the table. It allows us to understand what is going on, and it has a component of non-judgment, which for me, I find it's the most difficult part of mindfulness, the not judging. But again, it's like anything. When we first start out, when we grabbed a bicycle for the first time, we didn't know how to ride it. We fell a whole bunch of times. We scraped our knees and got hurt, but we would get up and get back on the bike and keep going until we figured it out.
Yep.
So it's the same thing, with any practice. It has a learning curve, and it's not easy. It's not going to be from one day to the next, but it allows us to begin to see, oh, I'm being super judgmental, or oh, this is coming up, and so it gives us that opportunity to really understand and get to know ourselves. And sometimes the scary thing is that when we look inside, we don't like what we see. But there's opportunity to say, okay, if I don't like this, I can change it.
I
And
love
what am
that.
I going to do to change it? Right. Yeah.
And that's and so much can change with that. You know, there can be so much self-forgiveness, and then there can be so much more kindness, and you can be set on you can choose to sort of set foot on that path towards these really, really good things. And it is a choice. I mean, earlier you said that this amounted to a daily practice of choice. And I really think that's a great place to kind of wrap up this conversation on, because we do, I mean, you can't ignore the frightening and the bad stuff, you know, but we do get to choose how we respond to it and how we react to it. So, so I mean, I just love your whole message, Mariela. It's so great that you could bring it to us, and we can have it out on the show.
Oh no, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. It is, like you said, you know, just to wrap up, it's a choice. And one of the most important things is choosing to have that attitude of hopefulness.
Yeah.
Because then that hopefulness will allow you to be more resilient and to get yourself up when you fall down. Because it's not if, because it's when. You know, we're all going to fall down, and everything that we're going through is difficult, and you know, everybody. But it's our choice to lift ourselves up, and only when we've lifted ourselves up, we can help lift others up. So it's our choice. If we want this to be better, we need to be better first.
Yeah. Yeah. It really does. The flow has to go in that direction. Otherwise you'll encounter resistance. We don't want that.
Yeah.
So my intention for this show is that it is out in, I would probably say early to mid-August, something like that. And you, Mariela, have something exciting happening in August, right? Can we talk about this?
I do. Oh, yes, I would love it. Yes.
What I'm hoping is that people can hear this and then go to marielaortiz.com and you know, dive into what you're doing. So tell us about that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for this opportunity. So, with the work that I've done with kids, and my passion is kids, I realized also that moms and educators, all the people that have an interaction with kids, really need support. And like what we were talking about right now, that we need to be well in order to help others be well. As moms, we leave our self-care till the very end of the list of things to do, and we cannot give from an empty cup. So I put together a summit that's called Mommy Matters, and it starts in August, but it runs almost all of August till, I believe it's the 27th of August. It's a free summit where there are 25 experts coming in every day to talk about self-care, to talk about ways that moms can really help themselves to make those shifts, to dedicate time for them to be better. Now we think of self-care and it's like, you know, pampering and the massage, but it's self-care is so much more than that, you know, and that's what we're talking about in this summit. So, you know, the idea is to be able to reach as many moms, especially right now with everything that's going on in the world and the overwhelm that so many parents, and, you know, I say moms, parents in general. As a mom myself, I guess that's why I directed it to moms, to women. But this helps dads and whoever takes care, caregivers, right? Whoever takes care, and educators, you know, teachers are like, they're like the moms of the kids when they're in school, right? So it's for caregivers, so they can learn how to fill their cup, understand their needs, so then they can give, but having what to give and having that fuel that they need mentally, emotionally, physically, in order to be able to have that empathy and compassion to support the children that need it so much right now too.
Yep, yep. Is Mommy Matters, is it available at marielaortiz.com?
No,
Or does
it
it have its
is.
own?
Yeah, it has. It's called. It's mommymatterssummit.com.
All right, I'm just gonna make sure that I write mommymatterssummit.com. Excellent. And I'm very excited and honored because I am going to be one of those presenters. So
I am thrilled that you're going to be one of our experts.
yeah, I'm excited about it too. Well, Mariela Ortiz, it has been such a pleasure to have you on today. I'm so grateful to our mutual friend for introducing us, and I'm just thrilled with everything that you're doing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Mariela you can find her at her website, marielaortiz.com. And as we just said, you can go to mommymatterssummit.com for the virtual summit that Mariela is putting on. You can find me at WeTurnedOutOK.com. You know, it's funny. Usually I introduce myself at the beginning of the show and I just dived right in. So hi, everybody. I'm Karen. Karen Lockholt. You can find me at WeTurnedOutOK.com. I've got lots and lots of free resources there for you, as well as more information about my parenting books. I'm so excited about this. I've got a new print playbook that I am creating. It's going to be available on a monthly basis to help people with what we're going through right now. I'm working on August, and it's like mind-blowingly, there's so much that we all need help with right now. And so that's one of the things. And I've also got a virtual coaching practice that you can come and join if you would like to. I always finish up with a special thanks to our producer. He is the man who has been practicing mindfulness ever since the beginning of the pandemic. And he's been such a great example to me about how to do it. He is the 23-time winner of the Husband of the Year Award. My husband, Benjamin Culp. He's the voice you hear at the top of the show. He is also our producer. And I'm so grateful to him for everything that he does. And thanks again so much to you for listening. We will see you next time.